How's it going?
It's going. How are you, man?
Doing good. Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. What you been up to since we spoke last?
I'm honestly trying to remember when.
It's
I know
like
it's been a
last year or
while.
something.
Has
Yeah,
it?
yeah. I don't know. We'll call it a
Yeah.
year for argument's sake. I don't know.
Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah. But I keep seeing your Instagram posts. That's what I think I hit you up on IG and I was like, yo, let's have a chat 'cause you're having some spicy takes on career advice and stuff. So
Nothing spicy by Instagram standards.
true.
Definitely spicy, like spicy data takes. Let's put it that way. Don't want anybody to
Spicy.
get the wrong idea, scare them off.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, true, true. It's I guess for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
absolutely. My name is Albert Bellamy. I am people call me the Marine who smiles at spreadsheets. I suppose I called myself that to start with. So I shouldn't act like that was like foisted upon me, kicking and screaming. I am a retired Marine now. A and I've changed so many times already that it's tough to keep track. I have been up until recently an instructor for Alteryx. Became a fan of their software, used their software, got hired by them to teach. Did that for almost 2 years, and just recently have started to transition over to more of a consulting role,
Nice.
working more directly with clients and doing technical advising and more kind of one-on-one use case stuff rather than speaking to a classroom full of people trying to learn the software. And then on the side, I kind of stumbled into this entrepreneurship thingy, had zero intention of ever doing that. I figured I'd just be a salary man for the rest of my life. And yeah, one thing led to another, and suddenly it was like, well, I'm helping people, and there's a whole lot of people that want my help. And then it's like, okay, well, I guess I better charge some of them some money to see who goes to the front of the line. And then oh, my son's heading back to college.
Hey,
Um,
right. See you. See you,
yeah,
kid.
he came down to vote, and now he's heading back. He lives about an hour away.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, but yeah, so I mean that just sort of snowballed into at some point you're like, wow, maybe we should like be a real business instead of just a dude selling
Mm,
hours of his time. And then it was like, oh, I guess we need an accountant and we need a website and and then suddenly before you know it, stuff's official and you're like, ah, but we need more and more structure to keep the ball rolling here. So the life comes at you fast once you get any level of expertise in this tech sector. So it's crazy. I know you're well beyond whatever stage I'm at, but yeah, it was not in the grand plans at all. It sort of happened to me.
you know what though? It usually isn't, right? I think
Yeah,
it's business is one of entrepreneurship's one of those things I feel like um the good things happen when you don't expect them to happen and you don't I think it and you're not trying to make it happen. Like the and what I mean by this is like you found some sort of organic growth and opportunity, right? But if you had tried to force it,
yeah,
like I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make money off of people and this is how I'm going to do it. You can certainly do that, but the intentions, I think the intentions people see with that is they see it and it's pretty obvious. And you're not coming from a place, I think, of trying to truly help people in the sense where they want to be helped, right? Or if they're coming to you like it sort of happened with you, and we can get into that. I'm actually curious now. I didn't know that you went to the entrepreneurship route like you did, but
yeah,
I know in my experience, it's just you kind of you don't know you've become an entrepreneur until you've become one, and then you
yeah,
find yourself like, crap. All right, I guess like you say, you got to get the systems in place, you got to get the infrastructure. This is taking up more and more of your time, and pretty soon, hey,
yeah,
guess what? Like you got yourself a new job.
yeah. And then that eventually, I'm not there yet, but yeah, on the horizon, it's like maybe this is the main effort.
That's dope. So what are you doing specifically?
Daytime
No,
or
well,
my
I mean for
business.
the new entrepreneurial stuff.
Yeah, so I mean the business is called Bellamy Consulting. We've got we kind of started listening to some business podcasts and things, and It just evolved from, the social media efforts and networking, and eventually people started saying, well, how did you do that? They saw, came from a kind of unrelated field, and just created opportunities where maybe there weren't any, or just just talking to people, just being a good dude. And if I can call myself that, but
You are. You're a good dude.
just thank you, appreciate that. I was fishing for compliments there, and you took the bait, man. But yeah, just being good to people, and like, well, okay, you see somebody and you're like, how can I help?
Hmm.
Or you sort of cast about, and people want to help you, and it's just just basic human interaction, and trying to lift each other up. And eventually it just gets to the point where somebody's like, okay, well, can you tell me how you pulled that off? And you realize, sort of in a backwards way, it's like, okay, I actually have some knowledge that is worth something to somebody. That
Hmm.
may just be worth like a chunk of their time. You don't start out saying, you got to pay me $100 an hour for coaching. You start out and people are just like, hey, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes? Well, sure. Yeah, why not? And especially if it's someone that is a kindred spirit or has skin in the same game. Somebody says, hey, I see you came out of the Marine Corps and got a job in data. I'm trying to do that too here in 6 months. Can you give me a half hour and teach me? Absolutely.
Interesting.
And then, but that snowballs. And then suddenly if you're like me, or like I was, at some point you kind of realize that, you've helped this person, you help that person, you help these 10 people over here, and then you do some sort of structured thing where it's like, okay, let me jump on somebody's podcast and let me give away a resume review, or let me help somebody out. Let me, put a post out there and say I'll help 10 veterans with a resume. And then 10 veterans take the bait, but then 20 other people that aren't veterans say, what about me?
Yeah.
And suddenly you're sitting there and you're either telling people no, which feels like crap, because the minute you realize you know something and that can help people, you want to give it away. And when you start having to tell people no because you're like, hey, last night I was up till midnight reviewing resumes, or I was distracted at my son's baseball game because I'm sitting there on LinkedIn like approving connection requests, and my wife's yelling at me. And you start realizing, hey, I've got to budget things here. I've got to budget time. I've got to budget money. And you start telling people no. And then at some point, somebody says, well, what if I paid you to
Hmm.
cut to the front of the line? And you're like, at first, if you're like me, you're like, oh, I couldn't, no, couldn't take your money. And after a while, you kind of get comfortable with it. And you're like, well, if there's 100 people vying for 2 hours of my time that I can budget, how do you pick? Presumably most of them are good people. It's not like you can sit there and say, hey, these two are like the most worthy of my help. No, who knows, right? Um, but if you say, hey, I got 2 hours of time, and then I've got two people willing to pay for it, well, you quickly learn to take that step, and then you're in the business of, well, what's my time worth? How much of it will I sell, and for what price? Um, and even just talking about it sounds a little, you're like, sounds a little, the way I was
Nah,
raised, it sounds a little grimy, but
I mean
at some point
that's
it's like,
business,
it's
dude.
either all or nothing.
That's life in the big city. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's literally business is like
Yep.
supply and demand and putting a price on things. So
Yep.
I don't think it's icky at all. I mean, that's literally how the world works. I mean, you wouldn't go to your doctor and say, I mean, can you just
Yeah.
give
Fix me for
me,
free.
free, like, I
Yep.
mean, your doctor would look at you and say, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly.
You can schedule a time. Yeah, but and especially with what you're doing, perhaps there's systems where you can scale it past you and, maybe through automations or
Yeah.
God forbid hiring, which is just really expensive, but maybe that's what you have to do. But it's just there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, that's I think because it's at that point where you realize, okay, there's actually a business here because the way I view business is really if it's something where you feel the pressure to scale beyond what you would do individually, and like you have to start thinking a bit beyond yourself and your the 24-hour time limit you have each day. assuming you don't sleep at all actually or hang out with your family. But there's a
I do
cost to
require
that.
less sleep than the average bear. I will say that. So I gained some incremental gains there.
Did you learn
But
that in the Marines or
no, no, that's I mean that's all diet, man. I know
okay?
you're into fitness and all that sort of
Yeah.
thing as well. But yeah, once I was not a Marine Corps thing at all. That was once I took a lot of the starch and sugar out of my diet.
Oh
Don't
yeah.
need nearly as much sleep as I used to.
That's good, man. That's awesome. Let's try
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but it is interesting. I'm definitely stoked for you, man. I remember when you were coming up, several years ago, right? Because I think I met you at Harpreet Sahoda's Artists of
Yeah.
Data Science Fridays, right? So for the audience, Harpreet Sahota, awesome guy, but he had these weekly, every Friday afternoon, um, Zoom chats, right? Artists did, and it was kind of a COVID thing. It was during
Yeah.
COVID. So, but people like yourself, me, Vin, Dave Langer, a bunch of people, Mark
Yeah.
Freeman, a bunch of people, right? Kiko, yada, yada, yada. But people would show up, and I think it was just a really safe space for people to ask questions about data data science, maybe career advice. There were a lot of questions then, and it's cool to
Yeah.
see your progression, man. I mean, because I think you were, um, I always knew that you would do awesome stuff because you just had this drive and this ethic to you that was, uh, it had all the markings of somebody who's actually going to go out and do stuff rather than just talk about it. Um, so it's cool to
Yeah.
see.
That was I mean great memories. I remember coming home, yeah, Friday afternoon, you'd knock off and be driving home and sometimes, yeah, I'd be coming home a little late. So I'd have the podcast on my phone, kind of in the
Oh yeah,
cup
you'd be driving
holder
a
and
lot. I remember.
yep. Yeah, so I was driving sometimes. I have the camera on kind of up, side of my
Yeah.
face as I'm driving. Um, but I remember definitely remember a couple of times getting home and firing up the grill and cracking a beer and
Oh,
just
you'd be doing that
putting
too.
putting you
Yep.
guys on the side of the grill and just hanging out. And yeah, it was wonderful because I remember that it was just very accommodating to all. I mean, probably 75% of the time y'all were talking about something that I was just like, all right, my mind's blown. What the heck are these guys even talking about? But I was trying desperately to keep up, and I found as time went on, I was able to follow and at least comprehend more and more of what everyone was talking about. And it was super cool because they would welcome people of all ability levels. So, me,
Yep.
the, didn't know anything at the time. Just tossing me a question or an audience member would ask something about, hey, where do you find data sets for projects? The entry level type question, and Harpreet would toss me the question. And I was very appreciative that I got to come on camera and and say something that was kind of appropriate to my skill level. And yeah, it was a really fantastic opportunity. And I really appreciated it. I remember it blowing my mind when I first started touching base with thought leaders in the industry and just the fact that I would send Kenji a message and he'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll connect. I'm like, really?
That's cool.
Are you
He's a good
serious?
dude.
And and you and Heartbreak and everybody just being super welcoming and there was there's no kind of caste system with it. It was just, hey, like all are welcome, man. It's a growth industry. Come on in, ask me any questions you want. Yeah, it was really fantastic. And I did not find that in other industries, even in other tech industries. I don't feel like there's
Hmm.
that kind of community atmosphere, not only with that show, but just sort of genetic to the population.
Mm.
And I've heard so many people, even in the last few years, remarking that to me, like, "Hey, I can't believe you connected with me on LinkedIn." I'm like, man, this is how I got my start. Like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, pay it forward. Yeah, you'll
Yeah,
be happy to know actually when I was in Finland, got to hang out with was it Vin, Auntie Rask, and Russell Willis.
Auntie,
So
awesome.
the
Yeah.
people that were just Zoom avatars back in the
Did Auntie play anything? I always want to hear the guy live, like play music or.
he only did karaoke, but
Okay, that's good.
yeah. Um, but no instruments. He is in a band, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting. It's kind of this, the kind of the squaring the circle, however that works.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I think you've been on my podcast. I think the Monday Morning Data Chat
Hmm.
as well. So and he always had good perspectives on career advice. And but the job market's changed since then.
Yeah.
What are you seeing out there right now in the job market?
It has changed. I don't know that it's changed necessarily as much as the
Mm.
perception that it's changed,
Oh,
for
okay. Let's dig
one.
into that because I only have perceptions. I'm not looking for a job. So
Yeah. I,
yeah.
I think that there are like the narrative out there is just has massive power right now.
Mm.
And I see so many entry level analysts, especially the college students, the the narrative takes on a life of its own, and everybody's kind of saying the exact same buzzwords. And you know, you talk to a young entry level analyst and say, okay, well, you know, you're struggling to find a job. Okay, let's dig into that. What do you think the problem is? Or you get some metrics from them, just like how many times have you applied for a job? 1,000, pretty standard. How many interviews have you had? Two, but neither one of them was, you know, they were both scams or they're both, you know, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
a screening call where they didn't have much interest. Say, okay, well, that's a sub average percentage hit percentage there. What do you think the problem is? Every single one of them, word for word. It's a tough job market.
Mm.
And it's like they're reading from the same play sheet, like they're an offensive coordinator or something. Um, and and it's uncanny the kind of the words and phrases that they use. And the only explanation for it is everybody's kind of drinking from the same fountain and they're all repeating these same stories to each other. But it's remarkable. You kind of give them a few insights. Just say, hey, if you tweak this on your resume, you're gonna get more hits. I don't know if it's gonna get you a job, but you'll get a higher hit percentage of getting interviews. If you and the, almost all of their resumes are written the exact same way.
How are they
So that tells
written?
me there's just some undercurrent of thought leadership out there that is just counter to reality.
Interesting.
And I don't know what it is, if it's like college, career, services, offices that are just all thinking the same thing, and just nobody's out there actually talking to hiring managers or talking to people in the
Interesting.
industry. You would think that some of the schools have their thumb on the pulse of the industry, but they you see the same thing over and over again, and it's distressing. But they all kind of say the same thing: tough job market. I need to up my skills. I need to everybody is just, you know, stack more skills, and it translates down to if enough people are out there saying it, and they're all kind of on the same. They're all on LinkedIn. They're all talking to each other. Um, and it translates to people that aren't in college, people that are pivoting from other
Mm.
industries. You know, it's a tough job industry, tough job industry, tough job industry. After a while, it's like we gotta, even if it is, and I'm not saying it's not, and I know people that are in the know that are saying it has changed. But people are hiring out there, and people are getting jobs out there. And one of my favorite expressions, I can't remember where the heck I heard it, but I certainly didn't make it up. But it's you don't need a job industry. It doesn't matter that it's a tough job industry. You don't need an industry. You need one job.
Hmm.
So yeah, it may not be the plush, you know, kind of target rich environment that we had back in 2020 when everybody was going remote and everybody needed an army of bean counters sitting at home crunching data. It may not be like that anymore, but there's still jobs,
Yeah.
and those jobs are still going to somebody. I would say it's probably more by referral now. The good jobs are probably more and more networking referrals, especially internal referrals, especially like internal referrals in the know, because there's a whole hierarchy of how good is the referral. Um, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people understand. And we talked about that on in some social media posts. But yeah, I just think that there's a massive disconnect. There's just an information imbalance between the job grantors and the job seekers that, you know, I'm constantly trying to level out as best I can. But you know, Jonathan Moxon is only one man. So
What? Okay, so you mentioned all the resumes seem to be the same. What are some of the characteristics of this sameness that you're seeing?
They're all, well, first of all, they're nothing but facts, like wall to wall data, which seems counterintuitive that that's a problem for a data analyst, but it absolutely is. The resume is a sales pitch. You've got to tell a story. And that's something that I try to focus on. It's like your story is unique. Let's tell your unique story. I don't know if it's gaining any traction. It's, something I'm trying to put a little more energy behind. And I don't know if it resonates overly well. I'm I was a marketing analyst, but I was a numbers guy, not a copy guy. But that's the thing. It's got to tell a story. It's got to sell you as a candidate. There's a million people out there that have the exact same set of technical skills. But the people you want to hire are the people that have the skills, yes, but also are a culture fit. Well, how do you establish yourself as a culture fit?
Mm,
Not with a sheet of, printed to the margins, 8-point type facts and figures. You got to communicate. If you can't communicate on a sheet of paper, what are the odds you're going to be able to communicate in person when you've got to deliver some sort of report? I mean, the Venn diagram of people that can't write but can present in person, there's not a lot of overlap there. Good communicators tend to be good across all media. And so if I'm looking at 10 resumes and I've got one job to hand out and they all have the same set of skills, but one person is telling me a convincing story and their resume speaks to, I'm a culture fit, I know how to tell my story and therefore probably will know how to tell the business's story as well. That's the person I'm likely to interview. And,
mm,
if they come in person and they can speak as well as they can write, well, that's probably the person I'm going to hire.
right. And it's interesting, because yeah, I do I speak at universities once in a while. I used to
Hmm.
teach at one. And I teach elsewhere as well. But but it is interesting because I feel like there's students that are graduating. It's the questions I always get is how do I stand out, right? And they tell them, well, um, obviously be good at communicating, be good at conveying not just what you know, but who you are. Because when you graduate too, in a lot of whether it's undergrad or grad school, your portfolio projects are basically all the same, right? You have a
Yep.
capstone project. You've done this, you've done that. You've probably done some stuff in the Titanic data set or whatever. And it's like, that's great. So have the other like 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 other people that we just
Yep.
saw exactly the same thing. Portfolio projects is something I would love your take on this. Because again, I haven't looked for a job for ages. I've got my jobs, well, I haven't had a job in ages either, but the last one I got was referrals, right? I think I was like
Yeah.
literally in the men's room in a urinal and the guy next to me was a CEO of a company across the hall and he's like, "So you ready to come work with us now?" I'm like, Okay, I guess we're having this conversation here. I'll think
Yeah.
about
Can I
it."
can I at least tidy up first?
Yeah, yeah, but it was just funny as a side note because this would be the interview process because he already knew who I was. So just
Yeah.
like, "So you ready to come over?" And I think one day I was just like fed up at my job and it's like, "Fuck it, I guess I'll join your
It
company."
only takes one bad day.
It just takes one bad date. I was just
Yeah.
burned. I was burned to a crisp. So yeah, yeah, but it's funny, but that's the referral type piece for
Yep.
urinal interviews. I don't know. It's a new thing. Don't try
I know
this at
that's a
home, kids.
tactic. Don't everybody go out there and start hanging out at urinals
No,
hoping
please
that,
don't. That's very weird.
yeah.
Yeah, especially at truck stops or something like that. Just kidding. So but okay, so portfolio projects is something where I feel like this is, always the advice. Like you got to have portfolio projects. You got to have portfolio projects. Albert, do you need portfolio projects? And if so, what would a good portfolio project look like?
I think that much like the narrative about the poor narratives about the job market, poor narratives about resumes, I think there was a narrative for a long time about portfolio projects that
Mm,
I don't know if anybody was saying this like overtly, but it took on a life of its own where it was like portfolio projects are the be all end all. They are the skeleton key of job getting. If you make a nice portfolio, so many people are going to see it. It's going to be a lead magnet for you. a project portfolio is to me as a job getting tool. It's kind of a shot in the dark. It's like putting skiing on your resume. You're
Mm,
hoping that somebody looks at it and is impressed and then says, "Hey, come on in for an interview." Could it work? Absolutely. You could also get an interview because you went to Cal State Fullerton and the person hiring just happens to have gone to that school as well. Can you bank on that? Absolutely not. I will say that to me, the far more likely result of building a project portfolio is you're going to get better at your craft. You're going to get over some of the imposter syndrome and some of the kind of aw shucks of presenting your work in public. Even if nobody ever sees it, there's some kind of, you know, I don't even know what word I'm searching for here, but there's some kind of guts that it takes to present your stuff publicly for scrutiny, scorn, mockery, abuse, whatever. And just to put that out there, even if it's a tree falling in the forest, that's something that
hmm
shows that, hey, this is my work for good, bad, or indifferent. Go ahead and judge it as thou wilt and, give me feedback.
Sure.
That is valuable. It's far more likely that the average junior data analyst is going to find value in that process and in the learning that they get from that and in putting something out there and then maybe just looking at it themselves and saying, oh, wow, that's terrible. Let me fix that. And then you go back and you iterate on your project again and you make it better, or you make it the next one better with the lessons learned. That has tremendous value. Odds are for every 10 project portfolios that out there, a hiring manager is going to look at one of them. I don't know what the stats are, but just
Yeah.
saying it's going to be a minority. There are so many people out there making Wix sites and GitHub pages and whatnot. Vast majority of them are not likely to move the needle in a hiring process. Most hiring managers, recruiters, screeners, they don't have the time, and a lot of them don't have the knowledge to even go to a portfolio site and know if what they're looking at is quality or not. They may not know if it's a cut and paste from somebody else's GitHub
Right.
page.
Yeah.
They don't know if you wrote that code, but there's a chance if they see a project that interests them, and then the hiring manager asks about it in the interview, and you can communicate it effectively in such a way that makes it apparent that you did actually do it yourself and that you learned lessons from it, then that absolutely has value. I recommend that people do a project portfolio, but I recommend it for the learning that you are likely to get from it, not because it's likely to, close the deal on some sort of hiring process for you.
hmm
As far as where to get them, just everywhere. There's, I should put out a video on like what I see as the hierarchy of, good, better, best for project portfolios. Obviously, stuff where I call it paint by numbers. If you're following, God bless him, if you're following Alex Freeberg on YouTube and you're painting by numbers and you're doing all the steps that he tells you to do, I've been there, I've done those, I've made content out of that.
Yeah.
But if you're doing that and that's your project portfolio, you're showing that you can follow instructions. That's something.
hmm
And you're likely to learn some lessons from that. The real lessons learned are in making your own mistakes and
Yeah.
in pursuing things that interest you. So if that's sports, like Avery and the stupid Utah Jazz, sure, do that.
Yeah.
If that's, I love the Cleveland Guardians. Anyway, so I could definitely amuse myself for hours and hours doing fantasy football or baseball stats or something like that. I found that I loved marketing. I was in marketing for a year and
Mm.
a half, and that was fascinating to me. Just on the same level that watching social media response is fascinating to me. You can analyze social media data. There's plenty of jobs there. But you got to find something that kind of speaks to you and makes you want to get up in the morning and crunch numbers
hmm
because that shows in the production, it shows in your learning process, and you're going to do it for the love, which kind of ties back to we didn't get into this to make piles of money. We got into this to to help people and, to make a living for ourselves.
Hmm.
And then along the way, we figured out how to help other people. And along the way, that started making a little money here and there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it's got to be the project portfolio should be first and foremost for you and your learning process. If it helps you get a job, awesome. There's definitely ways to make it more attractive to where it could help in the hiring process. Definitely, if you don't have a ton of experience, fill out your resume with the projects that you've done. Make sure they're impactful. Make sure you're briefing them as if they were work. And that's something I stress with all my clients. When you write up a project, write it up like it's work. If you studied something, how many people did you save on the Titanic that would have died otherwise? If you'd been there with your
Right.
clipboard and spreadsheets and saying, okay, you get on the life raft and you stay here and play the trumpet or violin or whatever. Um, like what impact did you have or could you have had off of that project? If you learn to speak that way, you're speaking the language of data now. And that's why my kind of the grad level of projects is Titanic is a blast. The flower, the sepals and petals and whatnot, the iris data set, lots of fun. Video game sales and measuring how bad the Browns suck this year, all tons of fun. Uh, but you're not probably going to get hired for that.
Hmm.
Just ask Avery. He's been trying to get hired and working for the Jazz for like half his life now. So it's tough racket. Sports analytics is not a ton of jobs there, and it's the Harvard nerds like DePodesta that are getting jobs.
It's true. I think I heard one guy once. It was interesting because it was part of it was his portfolio project. I think he was doing some site where he was tracking Lego pieces, but you come to find out that Lego pieces, some of them are pretty expensive, right? So it was,
Wow,
yeah, I had no idea.
suppose
As
that
a
makes
parent,
sense.
you know how it is. You just step on them and then you cry out in horror
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, you walking through a landmine field of
I
Legos.
actually use like parent Lego story to teach machine learning.
Oh, what's that?
I talk about the difference between classify or not classify supervised and unsupervised. And I say, okay,
Mm,
supervised learning is like if you're a parent, you've got the big tub of Lego and it's got the Harry Potter and the Star Wars and the Duplo, like the little toddler stuff. And so it's eventually you get sick of it being everywhere and you put it all in one big tub. And then one day, like, your kid's in trouble. So you come and you say, okay, your punishment is you got to sort the Lego tub. And so you come to them and you say, all right, supervised learning, sort it by color or sort it by shape, purpose, but you give them the right answer. So they're sorting it, they're categorizing it by a thing that has a name, it's known. Or unsupervised, you come to them and you just give them five little tubs and you say, sort it out in a way which makes sense to you.
hmm.
And you come back an hour later and there's no rhyme or reason to it that you can figure out, but the kid's not speaking to you anymore. So they stomp out of the room and it's up to you to figure out what the heck they were thinking and why these pieces are in these piles.
That's a really good analogy.
I like it.
Yeah,
Just to my
makes a lot of sense.
dope
Well,
brain,
we've
it
all
makes
been there as
sense.
parents because it's yeah,
Yeah.
Legos are yeah, for people who don't have kids or people who do, yeah, Legos.
Yep.
Yeah, becomes the pile.
One's got a right
Becomes the
answer,
piles.
and only the machine knows why it put those things there. Machine in this case is your kid.
So you talked about referrals. What is it what's your advice to people who are looking to get referred to jobs?
Good referrals are a long game. And I half jokingly tell people step one is get out of your cubicle and go make some friends.
Mm,
If that's, and obviously it's not always physically. Sometimes it's just, get on LinkedIn and start talking to people. But when you start talking to people, it can't be, can I get a referral within the first, certainly not the first message, probably not the first month. You gotta you got to be a good dude or dudette first. It's that's got to be, and I think we're kind of that's the common thread with everything today is you've got to be coming at things for the right reason. So if I meet Joe Reese and I say, hey, can I get a referral within the first 5 seconds? You might say yes, probably not, but you might be in a position where, and I've talked to people where they're just like, someone asks me for a referral. I say, if they know the specific job that's at my employer, I say yes right away. My next question is, have they ever gotten the job? Most of the time, the answer is no. Why? Because that's a worthless referral.
Hmm.
As soon as you become known as a person that will refer just anybody, whether or not you know them, now your referral is worthless.
Yeah.
So that when a real friend comes to you and they actually need you to have a referral that's worth something, you don't. You've bounced enough checks that nobody HR doesn't trust you anymore. But yeah, you seek first to be a friend and to seek first to be of service to somebody. The first thing you ask somebody for, the most you should ask a new connection for is just a connection. So you exchange a message or two, you comment on somebody's content, and then you say, "Hey, would you be cool connecting with me on LinkedIn?" Or just talking in person, having a coffee real quick. Put a limit on it. If you want to ask for a coffee chat or something like that, sweeten the pot. Say, hey, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if you'll talk to me for a half hour.
Yeah.
Most people will do that if unless they're just swamped. Um, but it starts with that. Like, let me exchange something. Let me give you something of value. And it's got to be something more than just saying, "Hey, if I can ever do anything for you." That's a throwaway. Everybody knows that's a non-offer.
Yeah.
You've got to think of something that you can add of value. Like, "Hey, Mr. Thought Leader, Mr. Entrepreneur, do you have a stack of Excel spreadsheets somewhere that are just never going to get sorted? I can sort those for you. What's the project that is kind of an administrative burden on you that just never gets done? How can I be of service?" Probably half the time you're not going to get anything, but at least you're offering something specific and something that is of value. Everybody that's got, I know you have ideas all day long that you don't have time or energy to action. I have ideas all the time. No time, no energy to action. If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, what idea can I take off your plate? What can I do for you? Can I do an informal internship where you just give me a project and I come back 2 weeks later and tell you how I'm doing?" Sure, I'll think of something for that.
Hmm.
But it's the ask that is a burden on the askee, I suppose, that is just aggravating. It's
Hmm.
do you have any advice for me? And you haven't put any thought into that question, number one. Number two, now you're expecting me to like go. I mean, I barely have enough mind bullets for the day job and my business and doing podcasts and writing content. That takes up all of the mental energy. If someone is coming to me not offering anything and then saying, "Let me be a burden on your mental and emotional energy. Be creative for me." No, that is the one thing that I can't create more of. I have the
Hmm.
mind bullets that I have, and when the magazine's empty, it's so for at least for the day. No, I'll have more tomorrow. But yeah, that's a tough ask. So when they come to you and they say, "Let me offer something specific," and if at the end I've been of value or something like that, maybe, give me some coaching or something like that. If they come to you and they say, "I have these three specific questions at your leisure, whenever you have a chance, if you could answer these, or, if we could, get on a Zoom call for 15 minutes or something like that." Um, that's that's something. But first, jump on my content. Ask
Hmm.
a question on a post, or go in and subscribe
Yeah.
to my YouTube channel or something like that. That's a value. I'm trying to succeed on various different platforms with varying degrees of success. If you can help out with that, then absolutely I'll want to do something for you. But if you start with the ask, like, "Let me burden you," no. Like, and that sets the tone for, now you're an asker, now you're a mooch.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, and now there's a solid chance I won't ever want to help you, because that's how you started out the relationship, not, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah. I think this is just in general applies to LinkedIn etiquette. I'll pick on that, or maybe social media, but LinkedIn in particular, because it's a place where we do business. And salespeople do this all the time, connect with you, then the first thing is a request to pitch their product to you. I mean, my approach to this anymore is if you do that and we haven't established a rapport, you get removed as a connection because I'm at my
Yeah.
connection limit as well. So it's like I have
Are
no
you?
problem. Oh yeah, and then I also because I have 30,000 connections, so these aren't the same as followers, but like so remove as a connection, then you get put into the other folder, which is like purgatory. Um, I am ruthless about this. I mean, if there's
Yeah.
even a hint of this, it's like I don't have time because the thing is they're going to keep following up. There's one guy in there who's still messaging me to this day, and it's like 7, 8 messages in. He's like, "Hey, like just following up. I know you're busy," and it's like it's fun to sort of peek in. It's like lifting the hood of like a box full of demons that you could
Yeah.
shut and go your very way. But the other thing is, definitely get messages from people like you're describing, like, hey, can you help me find a job? And it's like, no, like I understand it's a tough situation that you're in, but at the same time, like I just don't have the bandwidth, nor
Yeah.
the inclination. It's like, this is your journey to go find a job, not mine. And I
Yeah.
certainly don't know you, and I'm not going to put my reputation at risk on referring somebody that I have no idea who they are. Like that's idiotic. And the thing is, it comes back to this whole notion of just being transactional. Uh, and then a friend of mine once said, he was actually was a friend at Google. We became partners with them, and he's like, so I was asking him, how do we become a good partner with you guys? And he's like, well, there's givers and takers, right? And you want to be giving. Don't just be
Yeah.
asking for stuff all the time. That's how you lose our interest real quick. And we followed that. But I think that's good advice in general for job seekers and anybody else. It's just, there has to be a mutual value of exchange and uh, show a genuine interest in the person whose content you're engaging. So engage with the content. Don't just send a message to people. I think it's a good way to annoy people like Albert or myself or anybody else. 'Cause we're not here to find you a job. I hate to put it that bluntly,
Yeah.
but that's reality of it, right? Like you got your own career to maintain. And I think that's the whole point. Like figure it out. This is part of being a grown up
Yeah.
is doing that. But and
And not unsympathetic because we've all been there.
we've all been there.
But you see when people take on the persona of being unemployed, like that can become its own thing. That can become all that you are. And you see people that just have that mindset of need and that they can't see past it. There's nothing
Hmm.
else in life but I must get a job. And I know it's tough. But but yeah, there's something that's got to be focused on the long game. You are more than, needing that next paycheck and having to get a a full-time position or an internship or whatever that next milestone you see. You're more than that. There's more to your life than that.
Yep.
And yeah, something's got to be focused on, hey, I don't just need an interview by hook or by crook. I need to cultivate and develop relationships with people because whatever job you're hired at, that's not going to be your last job.
Right.
Almost certainly. Layoffs happen all the time. People are stunned day in, day out. My number could be next. And the thing that's going to be that the best safety net you could find is having personal relationships for people for whom you provide some kind of value.
Hmm. And it's something I recommend to people, especially when they're in school, right? Is meet people now. Don't just go apply for jobs right as you're about to graduate, especially if you're a foreign student who's here on a
Yep.
visa. Like you got not that long to find work, and I'm sure everybody with a visa knows this, but it shocks me how often I find people who wait till the last second to build their network to start looking for jobs. I'm like, why? It's like freaking out that Christmas is, happens on the 25th of every year, every December. It's like, yeah, this is coming. Um, you know, I don't, it just boggles my mind. So I'm like, go to meetups, go, meet with people who are working in the companies you might want to apply for. I mean,
Yep.
these are how you get the referrals is showing up. I mean, I hired one kid who was, what was he doing? he was doing astronomy over at the University of Utah, and really smart person. He kept showing up to my Python meetup. So at some point, he kept giving talks. Was just super excited. And he just, at some point, I was like, "You want to come work with me?" The interview process was pretty short because I already knew this person, right?
Yeah,
But what are your thoughts about doing like in-person stuff, like going to meetups and uh, making friends that way?
it's great. It's I don't want to call it magical, but it's
Mm,
uncanny the number of times if you go to an in-person networking event, you're thinking, and it's all a numbers game. It's all, hey, I've got to submit X number of applications to get Y number of interviews, and we've all got these decision trees that we're working through. But there is some sort of particular magic about meeting people in person and going to places where there's an interpersonal dynamic. I don't think I've ever been to one where I didn't meet someone that I was just like, wow, I
mhm.
I can't believe, the luck of, and I'm an introvert, seems like we all are in this industry. I tremble at the thought of in-person networking events. I don't want to walk into a room and strike up a conversation. I'd rather take a sledgehammer to the face. But it's amazing when you just go in, you just find a kindred spirit, just start talking.
Yeah,
And you're going to find the first or second person that you just stumble upon in that room and start talking to, they're going to have something good for you. It's going to be, if it's not a job offer, it's just going to be, it's going to be a client, or it's going to be a connection, or it's going to be, you're looking for a Jeep and they're selling their Jeep at pennies on the dollar because they're moving out of the country or something. Something's going to happen, and it's just there's some particular magic about meeting people in person that just can't be replicated any other way. I've been to a
absolutely.
ton of different online networking events. Most of them are garbage, and
Yeah.
they're fine. They're not. I've definitely made good connections at online networking events. I've made better connections at events that were online but were not networking things. It seems like you're going to kind of attract a particular kind of person to online networking events that isn't necessarily the kind of person that is going to be a productive connection for you. When you go to like professional events, when you go to a Tableau user group or Alteryx user group or something like that, your Python meetups, you're going to meet somebody that's there that is just moving forward. They're
Hmm.
not there to make a career. They're there to learn something. You start connecting with the people that have forward momentum,
Yep.
they're going to pull you with them, and they're the people that have real opportunities for you, but they're not going to networking events to hand out opportunities. You had
That's so
one
true.
job to offer that guy. And so you weren't going to networking events to shop that one job. You didn't need to. But going to an event where you were both working towards some similar goal, that created a connection that bore fruit.
Yeah.
The things that I've done that have made productive connections were not, vast majority of them were not from networking events. They were from, hey, we're both working towards the same goal. And oh, by the way, I have a position open at my job. Oh, cool. Let's talk.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, something about being in person, it just attracts a different crowd.
It does.
And yeah, a lot of online networking events are, the
I would
ROI is
say
just
the
not
networking
high.
events in general, I think, are kind of sleazy. Like, there's certainly maybe some good ones for the most part. I remember this would happen, pre-COVID, as I'd show up to some sort of event, and then people would just literally hand me the business card. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
I don't know you, and your business card is kind of shit anyway. So,
Yeah.
but I noticed this. I was actually at a conference last month, and it was an after hours event actually. So we're all just
Mhm.
drinking, hanging out, and this guy is just walking around, and he's handing out his resume to people. I'm probably like 7 beers in or something like that. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this thing, dude. On one hand, I felt bad. On the other hand, I
Did you
was just
fold it up
like,
and use it as a coaster?
I think that's what I ended up doing, like a koozie kind of thing. Um, because I mean, not trying to be a dick or whatever, but I was just,
Yeah.
like read the room,
Yeah.
right?
Super
Like
weird.
nobody here wants to hear about your resume or anything. Like we're here to hang out and chat. So I mean, just have situational awareness. That's super
Yeah.
key. Because I think everybody to the T started avoiding this guy is what happened. You're just like, oh crap, here he comes towards me. It's
Yeah. This guy's not here for conversation. He's here to hit me up for something.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than if you were, if it's just some guy at a party who's hitting on all the women at a party.
Yes.
It's the same kind of thing. It's like it's not a good vibe to,
Yeah.
for people, and people see through it, right? And so,
Yeah.
um, now if you want to get a resume from somebody and have them chat your ear off about that, I mean, by all means, engage in this conversation. It's a free world, but I would say for the audience out there, if that's you, please look in the mirror and maybe reflect on
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Reassess your life choices.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Some
interesting.
strategic revision is in order.
Kind of closing out, like what are you excited about over the next year or two? Like, yeah, kind of bring it back to you and your journey. What are you stoked on?
Yeah. So the cool thing lately was it's funny when you talked about hiring. I was gonna joke. I recently hired my own wife full time. Now she's not making a salary yet, but we just made the decision that she was going to devote herself full time to
That's
the
awesome,
business.
though.
Yeah,
Congrats.
that was a big step, and we're very excited about it. My oldest son is also chipping in now. The younger two are like, well, what can I do? Can I get a t-shirt? Can I get I want business cards as well. So,
Did you have to be a
um,
Bellamy to work at Bellamy Consulting?
you do, yeah.
Okay.
So far, well, eventually, I'm sure we'll run out and we'll have to hire non-Bellamy's. But yeah, thus far, it's only people that share the last name. Um, but yeah, that's exciting. So I'm starting the progression of moving from an entirely one-to-one business with individual clients, moving into we're about to come out with a book.
Nice.
And so yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a lot of lessons learned about how to write a great resume. So it's there for the people that are still kind of old school, like you want to get down, you want to refine what you have, or you want to write one from scratch. Cool. We've got all the tips and tricks for that. People that want to get on Chat GPT, I see a lot of awful, awful resumes
Oh my
that
God, I
are,
can only imagine.
just AI top to bottom. So imagine the Mad Lib LinkedIn about section, a full page or 2 pages of that. It's,
Ugh.
all of the buzzwords, all of the garbage. You ask them about any impact metric and they're like, yeah, about that. I'm like, yep, knew it. So yeah, there's all sorts of AI hijinks. Do not jump on ChatGPT, cut paste your LinkedIn profile and say, write me a resume. That is not the way to go. You don't have to hire me, but pretty soon here you can grab my book and I'll show you how to not make those mistakes. But it's going to be full of, there's a handful of prompts that I use. I do leverage AI to help out, but you got to really proofread the crap out of it afterwards. Otherwise, it's going to screw you over. So a lot of good prompts, a lot of good tips and tricks, platforms that I use. It's going to be all very very low cost. So book probably about $20, maybe minus a buck or two.
Nice.
Um, and all of the platforms and ChatGPT you can use for free. Couple of different resume platforms that I like to use for formatting and stuff like that. I'll have some templates in there. So yeah, should be a good deal for people that maybe don't want to or can't afford to pay me for a one-on-one session.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. Now you're in the one-to-many business, right? And that's
Yes. So
content
very excited
business.
about that.
Awesome, dude.
That's going to translate. We'll go from there to a video course and
Awesome.
see how the people like it.
That's super cool. When's the book coming out?
I've got pretty much all of the copy written. My wife is going to be the one beautifying and formatting it, which is great because I can't stand doing that stuff. So she's going to be the one putting it together. Couple of weeks we're aiming for. So end of the year, certainly.
Dang. That's awesome, man. Sorry, my kid's banging on the door here.
Yeah, no, it's surprised my dog hasn't come in and jumped into my lap yet.
Yeah, that's fun. Well, Albert, it's good to talk to you, man. It's great. I'm stoked on your success, man. I think you're just at the very beginnings of something awesome. So
Yeah,
and you got the cool thing with you is you have the ingredients to succeed. Like you got like a this like I said, I mean, when I first met you online many years ago, at this point it was many years ago. It just seemed like you're coming at it from a place of just you know being persistent, And I think just coming at it from the right way, you weren't
Appreciate that.
transactional. You were just, I think, doing it the right way, and just being a good person, right? Just showing up, and that was it. I mean, you just showed up on my radar because you're just consistently at the Oris Data Science happy hours all the time, and it's like, okay, you're there obviously more than 10 times. Like,
Yeah.
okay, now you're a known person, right? And that's how I think you got, my perspective is that's how you got connected into the whole scene, was just showing up to those things, just being consistent. That
Yep.
LinkedIn, I think you did your LinkedIn hard mode stuff, and then you did a bunch of other things, but you put yourself on the map. So I think, what it means for business is, at least from my I'm sitting, you got what it takes, man. Because it's like business is hard. It's real hard.
It
Like, I
is.
don't think most of the audience, if you want to start a business, I would highly recommend you don't. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
It's too much work. Um, you're not going to see money probably for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably better off just having a job. And I don't
There's
think
no days off. My kids come home on weekends. They're like, "What are you doing behind your computer?"
working.
Grind.
This
Grind
is
never
what you get
quits,
to do
man.
when you're older,
Yeah,
Bellamy
exactly.
Consulting, when you inherit it. Just
Yep.
nonstop working. No, and I think people underestimate that. I think because I think the influencer set, it's kind of like, you're gonna be, at the door of a private jet and getting into your Lambo and stuff. And yeah, maybe at some point, but it's like, yeah, it's mostly sitting in front of your computer, just grinding it out all day. I
Yep.
don't think most people have the
What's the next
temperament for it,
idea?
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah,
yeah,
you gotta love it first. You gotta love creating content and speaking and having your voice heard first and foremost, and have something worth listening to. And then once you're comfortable speaking and once your audience is actually demanding more of you, that's when, something can make you some money.
yep.
But yeah, most people aren't willing to take the years that it takes to build up the voice and the audience to make it even mildly lucrative. So
No, it's hard work, man, but you got it. You got the persistence and the work ethic. So congrats, dude.
appreciate you, man.
Yeah. All right. Looking forward to your book. Well,
Yeah, Joe.
yeah.
Thanks for
All
having me
right.
on, brother.
Anytime, dude.